Kenya leader Martha Karua has shocked her friends in the opposition by declaring that she will support President Uhuru Kenyatta in his 2017 re-election bid. Karua has said she has never been a part of the opposition coalition code, nor does she have anything to do with the envisioned National Opposition Super Alliance. Now, Karua is planning to run for the governorship in Kirinyaga County next year, says her supporters have told her that she must support Uhuru if she wants their backing. She was speaking in Kirinyaga after a consultative meeting with NAK Kenya delegates from Gishugu. All right, and this story by NAK Kenya leader Martha Karua forms the basis of our discussion at this hour as we take a look at what exactly does this mean for the opposition who've most likely been banking on Martha Karua, who has been supporting them for the 4 years the Uhuru Kenyatta government has been in office. And then what exactly does this mean for the people of Kirinyaga County and the race for governorship in the county as well, bearing in mind that former Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anwar Guru has also declared interest in running for that particular seat. And this morning I'm joined by two gentlemen in studio. Jesse Odwor is an advocate of the High Court. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Akisa.
How is your Friday?
Very okay.
Very okay.
How's yours?
Yeah, mine is good.
Nice.
And of course, we also have Charles Wafula, who is a political analyst. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Akisa.
How is your morning coming?
Well, so far so good.
So far so good?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in. And straight into it, the Martha Karua issue has been discussion on the social media, on the mainstream media since yesterday evening. What do you make of it?
I think it is a good political strategy for Martha Karua, because there is no way she stands a chance in beating Uhuru if her backbone is central. The reality of Kenyan politics is it's very ethnic driven. Martha Karua has the misfortune of coming from the backyard of the president, and therefore there is no way the people are going to look at her and vote for her. With regard to code, I really don't think that she's gone away with any vote per se, because the backlog, if you look at the numbers of the last elections, what Martha Karua pulled, actually most of her votes were not even in central. They were most in the cosmopolitan regions of this country. And I don't think those votes could have easily been inherited by CORD. So the only thing that CORD has missed with the exit of Martha Karua, I think, is the national outlook of having a perception that this is a Kenyan, all-inclusive coalition.
But not numbers per se.
But not numbers per se.
Do you agree with them?
Well, Akisa, probably I should start by saying what a week for women in leadership, you know?
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
it has been a week for us.
Exactly. They were to concede, I think, what they wouldn't have imagined doing in their wildest imagination. But the value proposition of Martha Karua is zero in terms of what she adds to Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election bid. What I see is more of her, one, acknowledging that, look, I don't have presidential timber, you know, going into this next election.
Yeah.
And number two, I felt she should have done more by going into Jubilee hook, line, and sinker. You know, to say that, look, I'm not CORD, I'm not Jubilee, I'm not Kenya, but I'll be supporting the president, I guess isn't enough. She should have done much more in a sense to redeem the image that people have of her rebelling against their preferred leader, who is Uhuru Kenyatta. But again, I think to fully understand this thing, Akisa, we need to really contextualize who Martha Karua has been in the past 20 or so years. First of all, this is a lady who got elected into parliament in 1992 when she was barely 35 years old. That was quite a feat. And two, she was just one of, I think, the 3 or 4 women who were elected within that election. Number two, she's made immense contribution in terms of public interest litigation, family law, constitutional law. I remember one time she walked out of the President Moi in a rally in her backyard in the 90s, which was something which was unthought of then. And finally, also looking at a person who, I remember, I think around 2001, just before the 2002 elections, here is a lady who, when the whole opposition walked out, when the government had tabled the constitutional amendment bill, she's the one who stayed and argued her points out, and, you know, her contribution is captured in the hands. And so it was, in my opinion, quite surprising that Martha Karua would then walk away from what is a very solid national stature to then play sectarian politics.
Well, she also has things that dog or taint her name. Look at what happened in the Samuel Kivuitu elections when he was the chairman. She was the justice minister then. These are the things that still continue to taint her name, regardless of the stature we are talking about here.
Absolutely. That and also, if you remember, Akisa, the other mini scandal around the contribution of BAT to her campaign kitty.
Yes.
That was also an issue, and also the so-called spat that she had within cabinet with William Ruto when she was demanding that William Ruto has to resign with respect to the maize scandal then in 2009. So, I mean, a few things that are black spots, but by and large, she always came through as a nationalist. She's put a lot of things on the line across the 90s to push the nation to where we are, and her contribution to the Second Republic cannot be gainsaid.
Martha Karua has been condemning the government since it came into power in 2013. It's been more than 4 years now. She has kept at it, condemned them for corruption, said how incapable they are in running government. But then now she seems to be supporting the very thing she has been condemning for the past 4 years for convenience. What does this say about her? It's for convenience.
Of course, it is for convenience. It's politics. It's about survival and looking ahead to the next elections. Politics is structured in such a way that the moment you win or you lose this election, you start thinking about the next. Martha Karua, for a very large extent, she's held herself as a very nationalist, beyond compromise person in Kenyan politics, one of the very few sober politicians we have. But then I think reality is now dawning on her that I'm not going to make this thing in 2017.
If I continue to be
if
sober.
I continue to be sober the way I am. So Martha Karua's move per se is not really about this election. I think she's looking into 2022. So she's using the same strategy that Uhuru Kenyatta used. I've been official opposition leader, but then what about the next election? Kibaki is going to go back. So this is the first official opposition leader who backs the incumbent and then inherits the masses behind the incumbent after the incumbent retires. So when Martha Karua realized that Peter Kenneth has already come back to the question, realized it's time to structure. Because you put Martha Karua and Peter Kenneth on the same scale, then Martha Karua will have her day. So it's about 2022 elections as opposed to 2017. It's just the realignment factor that if 2017 I can bank on governorship, then 2022 I can go ahead.
He's mentioned something very important, the Peter Kenneth question and the 2022 elections. It seems that most of the people are looking at 2022, especially in the Jubilee side. We have William Ruto is looking at 2022. Peter Kenneth is looking at 2022. Martha Karua is also said to be looking at the 2022 elections. But remember, Martha Karua and Peter Kenneth both ran for presidency in 2013. So that means we are eliminating. Does it mean that we will have fewer people on the ballot? Of course, we have new players like Ekuru Aukot, but does this mean that we will have few players in the ballot 2017?
2017.
2017, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's still a two-horse race. By the way, Akisa, you ask a very good question, which I think in a sense summarizes Kenya's presidential contest. It will be always binary. There will always be only two horses. This whole talk of having a lot of candidates is really hogwash. In fact, third-party candidates will not even have a significant impact to the race. But I think just going also back to what you'd asked with respect to Martha Karua criticizing Uhuru for the past 4 years and then now jumping gun, I guess one of the important things to mention, Akisa, is that Uhuru also did the same to Kibaki. In fact, he used to call Kibaki lazy and all manner of you know, funny names. But I think the thing that made Uhuru a more solid contributor to Kibaki's re-election bid compared to, say, Martha Karua, is Uhuru had garnered 36% of the votes in central Kenya in 2002. Two, he'd also been part of an opposition coalition, Orange coalition, in 2005, which whooped the government led by Kibaki. So coming in, he had political stock as compared to Martha Karua and Peter Kenneth, who, even if Uhuru Kenyatta went to sleep, he'll still get probably much more votes in central Kenya without their input. So really, I don't see their input making a very big difference. In fact, for me, I sense, apart from her also, she turns 60 next year, by the way. So you need to also start planning for your retirement. And if governorship is that part, then you go for it. But also is to look at it from the perspective of how to strengthen Kenya in terms of placing it on a pedestal that helps Kenya get more members by supporting Uhuru Kenyatta. I sense that's her strategy.
Charles, so what are we saying? Peter Kenneth does not have the numbers. Martha Karua does not have the numbers. Whether they are with the Jubilee side or not, the Jubilee party or not, it wouldn't make much difference for them. But the politics of this country is a politics of numbers. Does that not make you a liability if you're not bringing anything to the table?
Exactly. And that's why you even saw there hasn't been any positive acknowledgement on the part of Jubilee about the announcements. As compared to, say, the level of ululation that was received when Uhuru was put out when Uhuru said, look, I'm joining Mwai Kibaki. So, I mean, I guess it's a harsh feedback, but it's the reality. They haven't mobilized as much. Uhuru Kenyatta is still the supremo here, and they have to live with that.
So it's, yes.
Two things about liability and asset to Jubilee that Martha Karua brings. With regard to an asset in Martha Karua with the Jubilee question, you realize that the president has been receiving so much bashing from the opposition, especially with regard to corruption. You don't see somebody he doesn't have a lieutenant strong enough to defend him. It's only the deputy president who from time to time tries to defend the president with regard to corruption. But then you realize the deputy president too is also tainted, so he can't stand on the moral ground. You realize during the 2007-2008 post-election violence, it was actually said that Martha Karua was the only man in Kibaki's cabinet. She single-handedly took the Raila factor when there was issues between Kibaki and Raila, and all the other lieutenants were quiet. So with regard to Martha Karua coming into Jubilee question, in Martha Karua, Uhuru can bank on a lieutenant. Being a liability, we spoke last week about the eminent split and factions in the Jubilee party the moment officials are called and nominations are done. Martha Karua comes in with her party NAK Kenya, but then doesn't join Jubilee. So in other words, she's saying, I'm going to support Uhuru, but then for other seats, NAK Kenya is open.
It's the same thing PNU did with Peter Munya's.
Yes, it's the same thing PNU did. So with the reason why there's not much jubilation as Charles is saying is because the people in Jubilee knows that NAK Kenya coming into central Kenya is going to walk away with substantial seats. So therefore, to them, it's bad. It means that the moment we don't get the right people to start the Jubilee ship, then it means they have an alternative in NAK Kenya. Since PNU isn't so much welcomed as much, there's a tug of war with Jubilee and PNU. So when you bring in PNU, bring in NAK Kenya, then the decent votes in Jubilee have an alternative. Yeah.
Now, in this Kirinyaga race, we have Martha Karua, we have Anne Waiguru, who seems to be endorsed already by most people from the Jubilee side. Is it going to be a tough one for Martha?
Well, at least so far for Kirinyaga, Martha is the only candidate. Waiguru and that with the current governor, they are aspirants because all of them are still seeking the Jubilee ticket. So that means they are not past that post, which is also critical. Well, I think to analyze this is also to consider the fact that Waiguru has fallen out with the deputy president, who's a critical player and decision maker in terms of who gets what ticket on the Jubilee party. I sense Waiguru goes into this election with more battles in her hands compared to Martha Karua. But in terms of how that pans out, it's a bit too early to tell. A year is a fairly long time in politics. But suffice it to say that Martha Karua will need to speak more loudly on behalf of the president to catch the eye, the ear, the heart, and to win the heart and mind of the people in Kirinyaga.
Regardless of this about turn, 360 degrees about turn she's made. Well,
so politics is about perception. And, Kenyans don't elect leaders, they elect ethnic shepherds. So if they feel you are watching the back of the ethnic shepherd, they really can also cut you some slack and support you. And that's, I think, where Martha Karua is coming from.
So what happens if the president endorses Anne Waiguru? Because they don't seem to have a problem, do they?
I don't think they do. I mean, even by the deputy president's own admission, Waiguru is pretty, and she has a good command of English.
And she catwalks.
Precisely. So she's not bad. I mean, but if the president endorses Waiguru, then Martha Karua's goose is cooked, really.
Do you agree with him?
I really don't agree with that. Central Kenya dynamics is different from these other sides of the country. For instance, compare it to Nyanza. In Nyanza, if Baba endorses somebody, that is a done deal. You just wait to be sworn in. But then in Central, they vote as a bloc for presidential elections. But then when it comes to this other function, you don't tell Central Kenya people who to vote. Case study is the TNA. All the votes for president went to Uhuru, but then you realize there are several factions within Central Kenya that did not vote for TNA candidates. And therefore, chances are high, even if Waiguru is endorsed and Martha Karua goes for the Kirinyaga seat, then I think it's going to be interesting. It's not automatic that she's going to take that seat, keeping in mind that there is an incumbent there. So my bet is the race might not really be a 3 race, but a 2-horse race between Martha Karua and the incumbent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then let's now talk about the national opposition alliance, the super alliance that Amani coalition leader Musalia Mudavadi keeps talking about. And this mostly targeted, one, the people who did not make it, the people who reigned for presidency but did not make it in 2013. Martha Karua is one of them. Peter Kenneth is one of them. But both of them are now pledging loyalty to President Uhuru Kenyatta. What will this mean for this particular alliance? Well, super alliance.
Yeah, sure. Akisa, you see, CORD does not have a challenge of a supply of presidential potential. It has a challenge of a supply of presidential egos. And that's what they're going to have to deal going to the next election. Because I think virtually all of those guys feel that it's their time. They feel that they're the best ones placed to unseat Uhuru Kenyatta. So one, Martha Karua moving out sort of decompresses the pressure within there. But number two, as Jesse rightly said, it also takes away the perception, this panoramic view that they were representing all other communities and tribes and regions across the country. But in terms of real count, Martha Karua wasn't going to add any value in terms of the number of votes. So she's good to go. And I think they just will feel bad because it looks like they've lost an important voice in terms of the criticism that they were leveling against the government. But going into the next election, no, they haven't lost much in terms of numbers.
Do you think this will bash the dreams of the National Super Alliance?
National Super Alliance, if it's going to happen, then I don't see it happening. It is
Why not?
It is an illusion created
not?
by Musalia so as to sell it out to the court. Because Martha Karua didn't stand a chance, even if the whole opposition, all the presidential contenders were supposed to unite against the incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta. Martha Karua didn't stand a chance there. I mean, politics is about numbers. You correctly put what numbers that Martha Karua bring on the table, as opposed to Kalonzo, as opposed to Raila, as opposed to Mudavadi. Because even if you narrow that equation alone, then you put in Mudavadi, you put in Kalonzo, and you put in Raila, then Wetangula is out. It doesn't come in with so much number. With regard to NASA coming together, the biggest headache is actually what brings them together to win the presidency, and that is the biggest headache again, who is going to be their flag bearer.
Because almost all of them
want to be flag bearers, and they think that they're all capable of unseating Uhuru, and then they are coming together in that to bring up the opposition with the intent that Raila is going to endorse them. That is the perception created by Nas and Mudavadi and team. Because you don't expect Raila to campaign across the country, get the political capital, and then you want to be endorsed sitting, and you're only campaigning in West and you're not going out there. That is going to be their biggest headache. And if NASA comes to be a reality, chances are very high that the person with the highest political capital, who is Raila Odinga, is still going to get the ticket.
And also just to add on to that, I think Martha Karua's decision to hang around CORD was very critical post-2013 because it has kept her in circulation and, sort of added visibility.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So I think it was important and it was the right move to make until now.
Actually, to add on that, you realize that everyone asked, when Peter Kenneth joined Uhuru, everyone asking, where have you been for the past 4 years?
Yes, and there were conversations on the social media because people were asking, you have the tendency of disappearing for 4 years and coming in just a year before the election.
Yeah, true. So Martha Karua at least has been relevant to that extent. She's spoken on issues of national importance, and Kenyans can keep a track record. This is what she's been doing. She's up to good. But then Peter Kenneth goes to the cold and then comes in. So you wonder, where have you been?
Yeah, on the lower part, Martha Karua, through her dalliance with the opposition politicians, she was at least part of the group that Obama rebuked when he was around. Yeah, but I mean, still, I mean, that's just on a light note. I think still it was important, and that's, I think, the weakness of lots of these politicians in the opposition. They don't engage on issues in between. To them, politics is about the general election, not what happens in between two general elections.
And their interests. A conversation we should have on just how mature our politics is. Jesse Odwor, an advocate of the High Court. Charles Fufula, political analyst. Thank you very much for coming into studio. Of course, this is a conversation we can continue engaging on the social media. But at this point, let's take a short commercial break. Do not go too far. We still have a lot lined up for you here on KTN News Center.